Jasmine Crockett wasn't trying to make a statement when she walked into Boston Luxury Motors. Dressed in a plain white t-shirt, faded jeans, and worn sneakers, she looked out of place among the marble floors, sparkling chandeliers, and million-dollar vehicles. But she didn't care about appearances. Her heart was focused on someone else, her sister Caroline. After beating cancer, Caroline had held on to one simple dream: to one day sit behind the wheel of a beautiful car, one that made her feel alive again. Jasmine wanted to make that dream come true. But the moment she stepped into the pristine showroom, the air shifted. Conversations slowed, gazes lingered. The staff, sharp in tailored suits, glanced her way with thinly veiled disapproval. She wasn't met with a smile or a "how can I help you?" Just silence and judgment. It was clear to everyone there: Jasmine didn't belong. At least, that's what they thought. What they didn't know was that in just 5 minutes, everything would change. And the woman they dismissed would leave behind a truth so powerful, it would shatter every assumption made in that room. As Jasmine walked further into the dealership, the soft click of her sneakers against the glossy floor echoed awkwardly through the room. Every surface gleamed. Every car shimmered under the glow of showroom lights, as if competing for the attention of the elite customers drifting between them. Jasmine, however, attracted no admiration. Instead, she became the subject of silent scrutiny. Eyes trailed her, quick glances from salesmen, hushed whispers from sharply dressed customers. It wasn't just that she looked different. It was that she felt different, as if her presence somehow disrupted the carefully polished image of the place. From across the room, Blake Thompson, the sales manager, noticed her. Tall, confident, and wearing a suit that likely cost more than Jasmine's entire outfit, Blake exuded the kind of authority reserved for those used to power and affluence. His eyes scanned Jasmine from head to toe, slowly, analytically. He didn't smile. He didn't greet her. Instead, he turned back to his papers, clearly dismissing her as not worth his time. Still, Jasmine moved toward a deep blue coupe parked near the center of the showroom. It was sleek, beautiful, exactly the car Caroline had dreamed of. She paused beside it, her fingertips gently brushing the chrome handle. That's when Daniel, a younger sales associate, finally approached. His tone was kind, uncertain. "Can I help you with anything?" he asked. Jasmine looked up, ready to respond, but Blake cut in, his words slicing through the moment. "I've got it from here, Daniel," Blake said coldly. He turned to Jasmine with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You sure you're in the right place?" His tone was patronizing. "This car, it's very expensive. Maybe you'd like to check out something more in your range." The words stung. Jasmine felt her face flush, but she said nothing. She knew exactly what he meant, and what he didn't say out loud. Her clothes, her skin, her presence. To him, she didn't belong here. But Jasmine didn't move. She turned back to the car and stood tall. She wasn't here to be judged. She was here for her sister. And no smug manager or condescending stare was going to change that. The tension in the air thickened like fog. Blake remained beside her, arms crossed, posture rigid, as if guarding the car from someone unworthy. Jasmine, still facing the deep blue coupe, felt his presence like a wall pressing against her back. The weight of judgment wasn't just from him. Around the room, she could feel the eyes, lingering, curious, mocking. A woman in a sleek black dress smirked as she whispered something to her companion. Two men in expensive suits chuckled under their breath, their gazes sharp and condescending. Every look told the same story. She doesn't belong here. "You know," Blake said again, louder this time for others to hear, "we get a lot of window shoppers. Dreamers." He took a step closer, his voice lowering into something more venomous. "But these kinds of cars aren't for people who come in off the street." Jasmine didn't flinch. She turned to face him. Her voice, when it came, was calm but firm. "I'm not here to dream," she said. "I'm here to buy." Blake laughed, short, dismissive, cruel. "Well then," he said, gesturing toward the back lot. "Might I recommend our pre-owned section? Plenty of reliable cars there. Much more affordable." The insult hung in the air, heavy and obvious. Jasmine felt it sink into her chest like a stone. but she didn't let it show. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Behind Blake, Daniel stood frozen. He had seen it all, heard every word. His jaw clenched, hands twitching as if unsure whether to intervene. But still, he stayed silent, like everyone else. Jasmine looked back at the car, her sister's dream, the one she had worked tirelessly to make possible. She remembered Caroline's face when they talked about it, the way her eyes had lit up, her voice trembling with hope. Jasmine had promised to make that dream real, and she would, not for the approval of this place, but for love. She turned away from Blake, deliberately ignoring him, and gently ran her hand along the car's hood. The polished metal reflected her reflection back at her. Strong, still, unbroken. Blake scoffed behind her. People like her, always pretending. He muttered, not even bothering to lower his voice. A nearby customer chuckled. Jasmine exhaled slowly. The sting was real, but so was her resolve. They could doubt her, mock her, judge her, but they didn't know her story. They didn't know that beneath these worn sneakers stood a woman who had built something meaningful. A woman who had already made a difference in the world, long before ever stepping into this showroom. And soon, they would realize just how wrong they were. Outside, the hum of a powerful engine broke the heavy silence of the showroom. A few heads turned toward the glass doors just as a sleek, black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided into view. Its presence alone was commanding, timeless elegance meeting undeniable power. The polished chrome gleamed in the sunlight, and the car rolled to a smooth stop, like royalty arriving at court. For a moment, the room stilled. Even Blake paused, brows furrowing. The driver's door opened. Out stepped a tall man, dressed in a tailored black suit and charcoal gray tie. His shoes shone. His salt and pepper hair was combed neatly back, face stoic, presence unshakable. He walked with quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. Jasmine turned, instantly recognizing him. Her eyes widened, but she didn't move. The tension that had clung to her chest began to lift, replaced by something stronger, calm. The man entered. Blake's posture straightened. Daniel's eyes flicked nervously between Jasmine and the stranger. Conversations halted. Phones were lowered. Everyone, instinctively, sensed this man was someone important. Jason. He scanned the room once. Then his eyes found Jasmine. Jasmine, he said, voice warm but direct. I came as fast as I could. Blake took a step forward, confusion clouding his smug confidence. Can I help you, sir? Jason ignored him. Instead, he walked over to Jasmine and stood beside her. He didn't need to say anything more. His presence said enough. Blake's face began to pale. Jason finally turned to face him. You dismissed her, he said calmly. Mocked her, made her feel small. His voice didn't rise, but the intensity in his words sent a chill through the air. Do you have any idea who you just judged? Blake opened his mouth, then shut it. Jason continued. This is Jasmine Crockett, founder of the Collins Foundation, one of the largest charities for disabled children in the country. She's saved thousands of lives. And she's my sister. Gasps rippled through the room. The customers who had whispered and sneered now looked away in shame. The woman in the black dress lowered her eyes. Even Daniel stared at the ground, unable to meet Jasmine's gaze. Jason stepped closer to the coupe, the very car Blake had deemed out of her range. She could buy this car. She could buy this entire dealership if she wanted to, he said, voice now edged with steel. But she doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, especially not here. Blake stood frozen, the color drained from his face. The silence that followed was thunderous. And Jasmine? She didn't say a word. She didn't have to, because now they all saw her. The silence inside Boston Luxury Motors was suffocating. Every face turned toward Jasmine now, but not with mockery or judgment. Instead, there was shame, awe, and something else, realization. Jason stepped aside, allowing the woman they had all underestimated to speak for herself. Jasmine looked around slowly. Her eyes met Blake's. He stood stiff, eyes wide, lips parted, the echo of his arrogance now just a shadow. The others, customers, sales staff, the woman in the black dress, couldn't hold her gaze for long. They looked away, fidgeted, adjusted collars, suddenly unsure of the world they thought they understood. Jasmine's voice broke the silence. Not loud, not angry, but clear, steady, and full of grace. "I didn't come here to make a scene," she said. "I came here to make a promise come true. For someone who fought every day to live. For my sister, Caroline." Her words lingered, soft but sharp as glass. "I wasn't here for attention. I didn't want special treatment. I just wanted to do something kind, something that mattered." She turned to Blake, not with hatred, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. "You judged me the second I walked through those doors. You saw my clothes, my skin, and decided I wasn't worth your time. But you were wrong." She paused. "My worth isn't in what I wear. It's in what I do, who I love, and how I choose to treat others." The truth hit hard. Blake looked like he might speak, but no words came. Jasmine continued, this time addressing everyone. "I don't want revenge. I don't want apologies that mean nothing. What I want is change. I want you to remember this feeling the next time someone walks through those doors who doesn't look like your usual customer." Her gaze swept the room. "I want you to ask yourself, what are you really judging? Because if it's just appearances, you're not just failing at business, you're failing as people." Jason looked at her with quiet pride, but Jasmine's strength didn't come from him. It never had. She stepped away from the car and turned toward the exit, pausing only once more. "You don't have to respect me because of who my brother is," she said. "Respect me because I'm human." And with that, she walked out, head high, heart whole, not as someone who had won a battle, but as someone who had never needed to fight to prove her worth in the first place. Blake Thompson stood frozen in the center of the now silent showroom. Moments ago, he had been in control, commanding, confident. Now, all he could feel was the weight of his own ignorance. Jasmine's words echoed in his mind like a slow, steady heartbeat. "Respect me because I'm human." He retreated to his office, closing the door behind him. The soft hum of the lights, the faint ticking of the wall clock. Everything suddenly felt cold and distant. Blake stared at his reflection in the glass window. The man staring back wore a $1,000 suit, but his eyes were hollow. He remembered every word he'd spoken to Jasmine, every smug glance, every dismissal. He had thought he was just doing his job. But now, he saw the truth. He hadn't just failed Jasmine. He had failed himself. Failed to be the kind of man who saw people for who they were, not what they wore. For the first time in years, Blake felt ashamed, not for a failed sale or a missed target, but for who he had become. The quiet pride he used to carry now felt like a mask, cracked and useless. And underneath it, Blake realized he had lost something far more valuable than reputation. He had lost compassion. The next morning, Blake didn't go to work. Instead, he sat at his kitchen table, eyes fixed on his laptop screen as he typed. Collins Foundation. As page after page loaded, Blake read about the lives Jasmine had touched. The children with disabilities she'd helped, the families she'd supported, the futures she'd made possible. Each story was a punch to the gut. He saw photos of Jasmine in simple clothes, smiling beside children in wheelchairs. No press, no spotlight, just quiet, relentless kindness. And yet he had treated her like she didn't matter. Blake felt his throat tighten as he opened a new email window. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked for a meeting with Jasmine, not to defend himself, but to listen, and to offer something far more sincere than words. When they met again, Jasmine stood calm, unreadable. Blake's voice trembled. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, "but I want to do something that matters. Not to erase my mistake, but because I need to change." Jasmine paused. "Change isn't in what you say, Blake. It's in what you do." And she walked away, leaving the door open, not for forgiveness, but for transformation. That was the moment everything changed. Blake didn't return to his office as the same man. He joined volunteer events at the Collins Foundation. At first, he stayed quiet, stacking boxes, helping children with art projects, listening more than speaking. Slowly, something in him began to shift. The kids didn't care who he had been. They just needed someone to believe in them. And for once, Blake didn't need a script. He just needed a heart. At the dealership, he initiated a training program. bias awareness, and human dignity in business. He stood before his team and told the truth. I judge someone by their clothes. I failed her, and I failed all of you. If I can change, so can we. The staff didn't mock him. They listened. Policies changed. A banner was hung at the entrance. We don't just sell cars. We deliver respect. And now, Blake, the man who once turned away anyone not wearing designer shoes, was the first to greet every customer who walked through the door, no matter how they looked, no matter who they were, because now he understood. Success isn't about what you drive. It's about how you make people feel when they're standing still. Weeks later, the grand ballroom of the Boston Hotel shimmered with warm lights and soft music. The Collins Foundation's annual charity gala had drawn hundreds. Business leaders, philanthropists, community members, all gathered for one cause: to support children with disabilities. At the center of it all stood Jasmine Crockett, poised and graceful in a deep blue gown that subtly matched the coupe she once stood beside. Her smile was calm, but her presence radiated quiet strength. Tonight wasn't about her. It was about the lives she fought for every day. And then, through the crowd, came Blake Thompson. He wasn't wearing a suit that screamed status. He wasn't here for appearances. He was there to work, to volunteer. He helped organize, greeted guests, and carried gift bags with children's names carefully labeled on them. He laughed gently with parents, knelt beside children in wheelchairs, and listened, really listened. When Jasmine noticed him, their eyes met. Later, as they stood briefly together at the edge of the room, she turned to him and said, "Thank you, Blake. Not for what you've done for me, but for what you've done for them." Blake nodded, his voice low. "I used to think selling cars was purpose, but now I know this is." And as the music played on, the two stood not as victim and villain, but as people, proof that growth is possible, that dignity can heal, and that sometimes the greatest redemption isn't in what we say, but in how we choose to begin again.